Georgie.
Yes, Lisbeth.
I have a story that I want to take you back to, and it might have something to do with swimming.
Of course it does. I'll allow it.
Thank you. Indulge me, because I think it's one of those iconic moments in not only swimming in Australia, but in the Olympics in Australia, and one of those moments where everyone remembers where they were when they watched this race.
Okay, I'm listening.
So I'm going to take you back to 1996. Mm-hmm. It's a time before smartphones. Mm-hmm. It's a time before the internet culture that we know to this day.
It wasn't a thing.
Wasn't a thing. The TikTok wasn't there. No reels. And the thing that was king was TV. We're all in our lounge rooms because the Olympics is on, and Kieren Perkins, the reigning gold medal champion for the 1,500 metres, is swimming. And despite being the Olympic champion in that race, he's in a real jam this time around and actually qualifies last into the final. So he's qualified in 8th. And that means he's in an outside lane.
How bad is it as a swimmer to be in an outside lane?
Very bad. Not good. Not ideal. I would say it's probably the worst position to be in, purely because you cannot get a sense of where you are in the race. And despite that, despite being out on his own, being an outside smoker, he stands on the blocks and belts out the most incredible 1,500 metre performance that I think we had ever seen on the Olympic stage. He'd gone from poor performance in his heat, dealing with some illness, to absolutely dominating that 30-lap race. And you can imagine just the crowd and the electricity that you would be feeling in Atlanta. And I don't think that was anything compared to what we were feeling in Australian households watching Kieren swim that race.
And it's so incredible that someone who was so pivotal in creating an Australian sporting moment is now actually the custodian of Australian sporting culture in his role as the CEO of the Australian Sports Commission. This is Sportish. I'm Georgie Trickett. I'm a mum of 3 sports mad kids and often get in trouble for talking too much by my bootcamp coach.
You do talk a lot. And I'm Libby Trickett, mum of 5, and despite being an Olympic swimmer, current gold medal moments include just making it to a swimming pool.
This series of Sportish is powered by the Australian Sports Commission, spotlighting Australia's sport participation strategy, Play Well.
Everyone should have a place in sport, and Play Well is about creating fun and inclusive sporting experiences. Kieren Perkins, we are so happy to have you on Sportish.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Kieren, you were obviously part of that golden age of swimming in Australia. You're someone who I greatly looked up to, even when I was training next to you in the lane in the lead up to the 2000 Olympics. But what sports, other than swimming, were you playing growing up in the 80s?
Look, because I grew up in that era, I suppose, we did everything. There was no real constriction like you see today, where seasons go for the full year and you have to commit. Like it was, okay, term 1, you pick a summer sport.
Yeah.
Cricket, tennis, swimming, athletics, and I did all of those. Term 2, it's getting into autumn. What's next? That's when the football codes start to come out, or basketball or something like that, and then the rest of the year cycles on. But look, I honestly tried them all. I played seasons of just about everything that you could name. Not rugby league, AFL in Queensland. Go figure. I don't know why my state primary school played AFL, but we did. Cricket, tennis. I did cross country. Did gymnastics for a period when I was really little.
You seem like the perfect body type for gymnastics.
Well, and as you know, I'm epically coordinated, so it went really well. But it was just what you did. Like I think one of the things I reflect on is that today we'll ask a child, "Do you play sport?" Full stop, singular, whereas when I was growing up is which sports, plural, do you play? It was just normal. I certainly didn't feel like I was doing anything other than what everyone around me was doing.
You had an altercation with a plate glass window that nearly saw you lose your leg, and as part of that rehab, you ended up at one of the only heated pools in your local area, the John Carew Swim School. What did you observe as you were swimming, or not swimming, rehabbing, going up and down that lane when you're at the school?
It's a long time ago. Thank you for asking.
Cast your mind back.
Many moons. But, like thinking back on it, it was literally that thing of, there's some really nice people here. And Mr. Carew back then, was always very focused on technique. So it wasn't this environment where there was heaps of pressure to train volume and turn up X number of times or you're not allowed to come. It was when you're there, you had to focus and behave, absolutely. But it was about learning the strokes. And I think for me, where the beautiful crossover came is that while I'd learnt to swim at primary school before that, I couldn't swim properly. And turning up there and seeing the way that all the other strokes were being taught, it's just like, I'd like to learn how to do those other strokes properly as well. And it just fit, like it just fit as a place that worked. One of the other odd little anomalies, I think, at the time that I often remind people of as well, he also had this thing where we were accountable for recording our own activities. So we had to do logbooks and we had to be able to talk through what it was that we'd been doing. But we also had to provide our school results as part of it as well at the end of each semester. And it was this dialogue about, if you're not doing school properly, then you're not allowed to swim as much. And that, it certainly fit my parents' value set deeply. And it just made it a thing that I knew I had to get that right as well.
Do you feel like that's changed over the decades?
Oh, look, 100%. There is no doubt that there's a whole bunch of drivers to this. I think, certainly when I was young swimming, no one ever for a millisecond thought that you would do this as a profession in the actual definition of the word, not yes, we work really hard and we are professional in our efforts, but actually in the profession of, can I get paid for this? Is this something that I can earn an income from that can provide me with a career? And the answer is absolutely not.
And I think that's what's really interesting, because your generation of swimmers were one of the first to actually get paid professionally by sponsors and people external to the sport.
For me, it in swimming especially, it started with Lisa Curry. She was the first swimmer who really made having a profile and connecting with brands a thing. And so we could, but even that's a funny irony, right? Because to me, when I look back on it, being a good swimmer gave me the opportunity, but I earned my income from turning up, filming ads, connecting with the board through to the suppliers. And it was actually all of the work of delivering on those contracts, which was that was what I ultimately got paid for, and it enabled me to swim.
Yes.
And when I swam well, I got the profile and that enabled that. I think as that increased, as the opportunity to be a professional and have a career, and especially when, the biggest named athletes are earning extraordinary money and it's seen as an opportunity to earn incredible income, that really shifted the dial. And so to do that, to be that next superstar, to potentially make millions and millions of dollars and live this dream that it's perceived to be is, I think that's shifted it a lot. And so it's created this opening in this narrative where, kids who are shown or show a little bit of talent, there's been this big reinforcement of, if you specialize and focus and go to your professional academy, you're going to increase your chances to be a superstar one day.
Specialist coaching, all of the
all
things.
of that.
Yeah.
When actually, like everything in life, it's a numbers game. And for every one superstar that makes it, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of kids who really were only ever going to be involved just for physical fitness, community, social engagement, and their own mental health, and hopefully to build a lifelong love, which I think probably happened more accidentally and coincidentally because of the environment back then, whereas this perception of professional opportunity has kind of shifted that a little bit. This is the nexus of it, right? Are we as a country happy to be observers of sport, or do we want to be participants in sport? And I don't think that there's a direct, immediate correlation in that choice to whether or not we're going to continue winning on the world stage, but it eventually will catch us up with us. It will eventually become a real problem, and that erosion over time of being an observer of sport and being known to be massive observers of sport just isn't enough to keep us at the top of the tree when it comes to our participation and our success in sport.
You've got 3 grown kids now. When they were coming up through sport and knowing what you do, what sort of messages were you sending them in your household about sport?
Look, and I've always got to be really honest about this when you go through it, because I think because I became an Olympian and won gold medals and have achieved what I've achieved, people attach a perception to that about what that means. And there's edges to this stuff, right? Like when I narrate the story of my childhood as an athlete, I was not a talented athlete. I wasn't even a talented swimmer, but I was determined and focused. And when I found the thing that I loved doing, I obviously pushed hard. Now, I eventually found the event that I was more suited for / talented, but that was middle of my childhood career, as opposed to I've tried it for a season or two and I'm a superstar, and that's why I've kept going. And so because of my life experience in that journey, I knew what really matters. Well, it's finding something that you love and that you're willing to give discretionary effort to, and then committing to do that. And so, I was always really clear with my kids, I don't particularly care what sport you play, but you have to play one, because it's so valuable to be in those environments. The sense of self that it can create, the sense of determination, goal setting, resilience, finding a community and committing to something, like all that stuff we kind of know. I value that, and I know that that's important to do, but I can't tell them what they're going to love. I mean, we think back to your own childhood. How much did you really commit to something that your parents said you have to do versus something that you discovered and you went, oh, that's cool, I like that, right? So I always knew that it was about them finding their thing. But you've got to be a little bit hard on kids in that, one of the things that human nature definitely has is that if something is difficult or we fail in our first efforts, it's also easy to give up and say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to something else. So, really strong of once you've committed, you've got to see the season out. There's no stopping halfway because you're not having a good time or it's a bit difficult. You have to get through the season, because what I also know is that 9 times out of 10, if you stick with it, you'll get over that difficult hump, whatever it was, and come out the other side and go, geez, I'm glad I kept at it. That was so good to be a part of, right?
Obviously there's ways that parents like to kind of role model what they're doing with their kids, and I think you've done an incredible job with your adult kids. That is exactly what I think parents should be encouraging their kids to be doing. But when we as parents play sport, what are we seeing in terms of the statistics for kids?
Well, so look, I mean, and I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, so you'll have to Google it, find the Ausplay survey, which will give you more numbers. But essentially, if both parents play sport or are involved in sport, the likelihood of the children playing is in the 80s. If one parent plays, then it drops significantly, and then if neither parent plays sport, then it's below 30%. Yeah. So, the stats suggest that if parents are physically active, and there's probably clarification in that it's not necessarily about you have to be out playing a competitive team sport or actually competing, but if you're physically active and you're role modeling that, your kids are more likely to also see the value in it. Like, as part of the human condition, we've all heard the, you've got to see it to be it kind of thing, but it's that sense of, if mum and dad can do that, then maybe I can do that. Yeah. And then you're able to sort of navigate those more challenging times when it's not easy or picking up the skills not immediately obvious, and you do sort of need to persist or work your way through. And I think also that role modeling of just why it matters, and when your kids see you having fun and see you being a part of a community and see you sort of enjoying the spirit of positive engagement, then that starts to matter more than did you win or lose, and if you lost, well, why bother kind of thing, which tends to pervade some of the more competitive environments.
It's like when Georgie started playing hockey for the first time. You were role modelling discomfort.
So much discomfort. No, I felt every bit of it. It was incredibly uncomfortable, but also really important for the kids to see how uncomfortable it was, and to understand that idea of when you do start something for the first time, it will feel a bit awkward, and to work through it and look what comes out on the other side. Someone who's less terrified of hockey now.
Yes. Not necessarily better at hockey.
Just less scared. Kieren, part of Australian sport is not just the kids who play it and the adults who play it. It's the people who help it happen every weekend in Australia. And refereeing is a great opportunity for kids to get more involved in sport. But we hear a lot of stories of what it's like to be a referee out there these days as a kid and the criticism that comes from the sidelines from parents. What are you seeing and hearing in the work that you do?
The reality is that club sport, community sport in Australia absolutely rides on the back of volunteers. Like none of it is able to be delivered the way that it is at the scale that it is with the quality of experience without a whole bunch of really passionate volunteers willing to turn up week after week after week to help enable it to happen. And a really important part of that volunteer set is the officials, right? Like all of the sports have rules, need someone to help adjudicate and keep play going in a safe and fair way. And so what we see all the time is that there is this tension that just seems to be escalating in a lot of our sporting environments where, people for whatever reason feel like their kids' sport is sheep stations and this is going to, determine the future of their lives.
Yeah, their trajectory and their career.
Everything about them, right? And that referees will make a call that they won't necessarily like. And what we're seeing is that this is leading to, a lot more incidences of aggressive behaviour, leading to violence where, these people are taking this angst that they don't like a decision and then spilling it into physical activity and behaviour, which is leading to a whole bunch of perverse outcomes. Because to be frank, if you're a young person and you're umpiring a game that, yourself is not going to change the course of human history or even those kids' lives, why would you subject yourself to being abused, yelled at, or maybe physically assaulted because some parent or someone doesn't like your decision?
And I think when we're having to wear different coloured socks to represent, teenage referees or learning to be a referee, I think we've gone somewhere very wrong in society. But can you tell us about the importance of, the impact of good officials and good referees and what impact that has on sport or perhaps on you growing up?
Oh, look, I mean, it starts with just that kind of understanding that people in positions of authority like that, the innate sense of respect that comes with a uniform or a role like that the rest of us should have is hugely powerful for society. Doesn't mean that they're always right, although they always do the right thing. Like, I understand that there's challenges that come with it as well when we become adults and work out some of the background. But in a general sense, when you're looking at the vast majority of it, like that sense of respect that comes with people who have official positions like that means an enormous amount because it enables the system to deliver great outcomes for the bulk of society. And I mean, I've experienced that deeply myself. I mean, being a young kid and standing on the blocks in a race and, the person with the whistle or who's triggering the starter's gun, they're frightening initially, like, oh my God, these people. But then, over time you begin to work out that, well, I wouldn't be doing this if they weren't there. And more to the point, they enable me to play fair and safely because if someone's trying to do the wrong thing, they can pick that up. And the impact that they can have is really extraordinary. I mean, one of the things I will never forget in my life is, club night one night, referee who was one of the state referees. So this guy was actually very, very senior but used to turn up for club nights as well, doing I can't remember if it was 100 or 200 butterfly, but it was one of them. And
one of the events you're known for, obviously.
One of those events I'm known for. It was a long time ago. I actually wasn't bad, but I wasn't willing to maybe work quite that hard, And, classic scenario, in training, Mr. Crew always used to hammer me because, when you're tired, you push off the wall, do a single arm stroke to get a breath and then get going again, which is completely against the rules. And it was always into you. If you do it in training, you'll do it in a race. And I'm like, nah, that's not going to happen. I'm too good for that. I'm too smart for that. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it in a race. And I'm like 10, right? And of course, club night in the race, push off the wall, off a turn in butterfly, single arm stroke to the side. Oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. And of course, I'm petrified for the rest of the race. Did they see? Am I going to get disqualified? Oh my God, if I get disqualified, I'm going to be in so much trouble. And, I'm completely freaking out for doing this completely wrong thing. Touch the wall, and as I'm moving to the side, the referee's he's done this to me. And now I'm really freaking out. Oh my God, I absolutely know. And he's pulled me aside and he literally whispered in my ear, I saw that. if you do it again, I will disqualify you. Off you go. And that was all he said. And like, that was one of the moments where huge relief.
Yeah,
oh my
of
God.
course.
Because Mr. Crew didn't see me do it. So I didn't get in trouble from him, because he definitely wouldn't have let it slide. No. He would have absolutely let me know. But you know what? I never, ever, ever did it again.
You learnt your lesson.
I learnt my lesson, and it made me train better, because it was like, oh my God, Mr. Crew's right. If I practice it in training, I'll do it in a race accidentally. I can't risk that.
Connection.
I can't risk it. I've got to do, and so I became a better trainer and a better athlete just from that moment. And it was, it was a small thing for him. I guarantee that he probably didn't even remember it, because certainly I was nobody at that stage. And it was one of the layers of what enabled me to achieve what I achieved, because I was a better trainer after that. And I became a successful athlete because I was such a good trainer.
Umpires and referees like that really are like the keepers of the sport in our country. They're so important. Kieren, in Australia, we really attach to the idea that we're a sporting nation, but you mentioned before that we're a nation of viewers, not necessarily participators. What do you mean?
Oh, look, it's that. So, I mean, we attach these perceptions to our national identity, right? And because we see our Australian teams doing incredible things on the field of play around the world, and really for a population of, 26 or 7 million, whatever it is now, I mean, it's mad that we are so successful globally across so many sports. We are successful across an enormous number of sports. And so there is this perception, and this perception then perpetuates over time. And the risk is that taking it for granted, we don't notice that actually, when you look at the population of our country and the number of people who are involved in what they're doing, it doesn't necessarily back up that as much. And I think, when we get to the Olympic and Paralympic Games, or we're playing the Ashes, or whatever it might be, those people doing that are the 0.00001% of the 1% of the 1% who actually probably were always going to be different anyway, because they've got that mental malfunction, that's something, whatever it is.
Screw loose could be.
And our system supports them, and it needs to, and it's always got to improve and be better to enable that to happen. But that's a population base of this much compared to this much of the humans who live in our country. And so what we're trying to kind of acknowledge is okay, so around 80% of kids under the age of 12 play organised sport. So that's incredible. That's actually nuts. And it's a combination of clubs, school. I mean, one of the things that we're really proud of is that the Sporting Schools program, we've had 20 million kids now over the life of that program play sport, which, is a great introduction, right? It's a momentum builder. But from the age of around 12 heading to 14, and definitely after 14, the number just falls off a cliff. And by the time you get to 20, less than 20% of that 80% are still playing sport. And that's a tiny number. The number of people playing sport still to drop off that level, that's not great. And that's where we're more observers than players starts to come in. Why does it happen? What's influencing it? What do we need to do about it? Because fundamentally, are we going to continue to be the best in the world at what we do, although it helps? What it's fundamentally going to answer is, are we a nation of resilient, healthy, socially connected, mentally well people who are able to continue to, deliver on that Australian dream, which the rest of the world looks at us and goes, my God, Aussies, you've got this can-do attitude, you're resilient, you get on, you take a little and you do amazing things with it, and all this sort of stuff. And a lot of that is built off our life experience and the things that we do. And so that's the bit, that's the thing. Why are we seeing that drop off, and really addressing and understanding that, because we want more people involved for the betterment of our society, not to answer are we going to keep winning at the international stage question.
Why is kids' sport participation so imperative to the whole sports ecosystem?
The more people we have engaged, the better off the sport ecosystem will be, because that then does support that pathway for those kids who want to be elite, to become elite, to then create that sense of national pride and engagement, and to provide the example that those kids who are young and playing can go, if Libby could do that, maybe I can. And so there is a circular economy element of it that really matters. But, it is for me that we want people to be lifelong advocates. We want them to encourage their kids to be involved because we know our country will be better off for it on a whole, really.
Kieren, I'm keen to understand if sport is so important, not just for the physical activity, but for the resilience and all those other amazing benefits that come from it. How much should parents expect to have to pay for that participation of their kids? Because we know that there are sports that are charging $1,500 for a 9-year-old to play. Is that where we should be putting our money?
No, look, it is one of the great conundrums in our system at the moment, more broadly, that, sport, like everything, is getting more and more expensive all of the time. And it's not just the fee to participate. It's then the uniforms and the equipment and the driving to and from training and paying the tolls and, the extra food. Once your kid starts playing sport, they eat more.
So much more.
And all that stuff barrel rolls into it. And so, and again, it's one of the things that the real wicked challenges that we've got to figure out how to navigate, because no, it's not necessary. I think that there is, unfortunately, this kind of, again, a perception that's being created that if you want your kid to be a superstar athlete one day, then they better go get themselves selected into that private academy and pay extra for the extra coaching and the tuition and the equipment and all that sort of stuff. And look, and there's always going to be a market for those things. But we have to decouple it a little bit, again, from the population level conversation, which is playing sport is turning up at your local community club and having a go. And yes, it will cost some money, but there's a lot of very, very low cost, easy to access opportunities out there, and finding those and being able to feel comfortable to engage is important. And government at all levels is committed to and working on that. The Australian Sports Commission at the moment, we're leading a piece of work in the industry around the Play Well strategy, which is really trying to uncover where are all the facilities, how are they being utilised, how do we get better productivity out of them, and what are the barriers to participation, which cost is a big one, right? How do we do that better? How do we start to find ways to help people participate? And, in many ways, the evidence is already there that people will find a way. I mean, when I look at the broader system, communities like Parkrun are booming. They're blowing up everywhere. This really easily accessible community has been created where people can turn up at their own time, in their own way, with their own sense of commitment, and are able to do what they do. And I think that we'll see more and more of these things proliferate over time. And, for me, school sport and sporting schools is a program start point, but creating that then linkage into the community is a big thing we need to solve as well. That obviously then also drives a lot of my focus and desire to change culture, where sport at the administrative level behaves in this nil-sum game way, like we're all at war with each other, when in fact we're not. And the more that we behave that way, the less successful we ultimately become. That's why, we articulate in things like our vision that there's a place for everyone in sport, because let's be honest, not every human being is talented and coordinated and able to be athletic in that kind of, Adonis mold that we put our best athletes on the pedestal. But you know what? If you can find the thing that you love doing and the community that you love doing it with, and after your time in it, you are a well-rounded, happy, mentally sorted person who's got a great social connection and ability to create social connections, then sport's done its job. And that's what I value and would like to see.
Kieren, I don't think we could have said it better ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us on Sportish.
Appreciate you giving me the time. Thank you.
Kieren was so good.
I'm blown away, particularly where he took that conversation at the end.
Yeah, I love the way that he has been to the absolute pinnacle of his swimming career. He's been an Olympic champion a couple of times over, and now he's leading the Australian Sports Commission. He is the CEO, and the fact that he's able to kind of direct it not from a place of elitism, you know, that elite sport mentality. It's really about that grassroots community level sport where you're connecting with those people, those social connections. You're, working with teams. It's about creating that resilience as well.
And I think it was really interesting to see not one but two elite swimmers talking about this idea that it doesn't just have to be about elite sport. It's about so much more, and how important it is that as parents we're role modelling what sport should look like. Because if we're not playing sport and we're not coaching and managing and volunteering, then our kids aren't going to see that as part of the ecosystem, and they're not going to want to do that when they become adults. It's not just about the kids of today. It's about fostering this relationship with sport with the kids of today, so that like our kids in 20 years' time are still playing it.
That lifelong love of sport that he spoke so beautifully about. It's
so important, and it's so crucial. And to give kids the support, to be the referees, to learn the skills, it's never been more important.
This series of Sportish is powered by the Australian Sports Commission, spotlighting Australia's sport participation strategy, Play Well. It's all about creating fun and inclusive sporting experiences for all Australians, because everyone has a place in sport. You can find out more about the Play Well strategy at ausport.gov.au/playwell.
This series is produced by Dead Set Studios and hosted by us, Georgie and Libby Trickett. Thanks to executive producers Sarah Dabro and Kellie Riordan, producer Luci McAfee, and production manager Anne Chesterman.
Sportish and the Australian Sports Commission acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land of which this podcast was made.
We recognise the outstanding contribution that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people make to sport, and celebrate the power of sport to tell stories and promote reconciliation.